Major George Patton was finishing his morning coffee when the aliens arrived. Not the diplomatic envoys that had established peaceful relations with Earth 3 years prior, but the Draxian war fleet that appeared suddenly in orbit, demanding immediate surrender. The Galactic Council, a group of 17 spacefaring species, had warned humanity this might happen, but nobody expected the Draxians to strike so soon. Patton set down his cup and looked at the emergency alert flashing on his phone. As a career military officer stationed at Fort Bragg, he knew what this meant. Within minutes, his phone rang. "Major Patton," he answered, already grabbing his uniform jacket. "Report to command immediately," said the voice of Colonel Frank Miller. "This is not a drill." 30 minutes later, Patton stood in the Pentagon's newly established Extraterrestrial Defense Command. Large screens showed the massive alien vessels positioned around Earth. Military personnel rushed between stations, their faces tight with worry. Colonel Miller waved Patton over to a holographic display. "They've bypassed our orbital defenses," Miller explained. "The Council's sending help, but they're 2 days out. We need to hold until then." Patton, a decorated veteran known for his unusual tactics in the Middle Eastern campaigns, studied the alien formations with narrowed eyes. "Their deployment pattern, it's familiar, like something I've seen in the archives." Miller raised an eyebrow. "The archives? You mean your historical studies?" Patton nodded. He had spent years studying his famous namesake, General George S. Patton from World War II, along with other military leaders from Earth's past. Most officers thought his interest was odd, preferring to focus on modern warfare and technology. "Get me everything we know about Draxian ground forces," Patton said. "And I need transport to Chicago. That's where they'll land first." "How can you possibly know that?" Miller asked. "Their ships are positioned for maximum coverage with minimal resource commitment. It's exactly how my namesake would have done it if he had ships instead of tanks. They'll hit major population centers first, starting with Chicago." Miller looked skeptical but made the call. 3 hours later, Patton's prediction proved correct as the first Draxian landing ships descended on Chicago. By then, Patton was already there, organizing a defense force of military personnel and local police. The Draxians, tall, blue-skinned, humanoids with 4 arms, emerged from their ships with weapons that fired pulses of energy. "Hold positions," Patton ordered through his radio. "Let them advance to the choke points." The defenders waited behind barricades in buildings and underground as the aliens moved forward in tight formations. Patton had positioned his forces, based on urban warfare tactics from World War II, creating killing zones where the aliens' superior numbers would count for less. "Now!" Patton ordered when the first alien group reached Michigan Avenue. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The Draxians, unused to such primitive but effective tactics, broke formation and sought cover. Their energy weapons were powerful, but slow to recharge, giving human fighters time to relocate between shots. By midday, the aliens had called in air support. Strange, dart-like ships swooped between buildings, firing energy beams at human positions. "Fall back to position Delta," Patton ordered. "Implement Rommel's retreat," his officers understood. They had been briefed on the historical tactic, named after a German general who had fought against the original Patton. The human forces appeared to retreat in disarray, but they were actually moving to prepared positions, leaving traps behind. When the Draxians advanced to take the apparently abandoned positions, they triggered explosives, collapsing buildings, and creating chaos in their ranks. By evening, Patton had moved his command center 3 times. He stood now in the basement of an old library looking at maps spread across a table. "Sir, enemy forces have surrounded the downtown area," reported Captain John Davis. "We're cut off from the Western Defense Group." Patton smiled. "Exactly as planned. Call Major Pete Adams. Tell him to execute the Bastogne breakout." As night fell over Chicago, the Western Defense Group suddenly attacked the Draxian rear positions with everything they had. The aliens, believing they faced a desperate last stand, committed their reserves to crushing this attack. That's when Patton led his main force out of downtown, slipping through the weakened eastern perimeter and linking up with National Guard. units arriving from Indianapolis. By morning, the Draxians held downtown Chicago but were now themselves surrounded. Their landing ships, vulnerable on the ground, were exposed to attack from human forces that should have been defeated. In orbit, the Draxian fleet commander received disturbing reports. The easy victory they had expected was not happening. Human. Resistance was organized, effective, and following patterns their tactical computers couldn't predict. On a secure communication channel, Admiral Susan Carter of the Galactic Council's peacekeeping force received the first reports from Earth. "Impossible," she whispered, reviewing the casualty figures. "No newly contacted species has ever held back a Draxian invasion force, even for hours." Her aide, a tall insect-like being named Krill, chittered nervously. "How are they doing this?" "Their technology is primitive." "I don't know," Carter replied. "But I need everything we have on human military history, especially information about someone named Patton." Back in Chicago, Major Patton directed artillery fire against Draxian positions. The aliens had superior weapons, but human cannons still worked just fine, especially when you had thousands of them. "Sir," said Lieutenant Judy Bell, "we've intercepted their communications. They're calling for reinforcements." Patton nodded. "Good. That means we've surprised them." He pointed to the map. "Have our forces in Detroit ready. That's where they'll land next." "How can you be sure?" "Because that's what I would do if I were them. Detroit has manufacturing capabilities they'll want to capture intact. Tell Colonel Miller I need more troops there immediately." As predicted, 6 hours later, Draxian ships appeared over Detroit. But instead of finding an undefended city, they faced prepared positions and troops ready for their arrival. In her private quarters on her flagship, Admiral Carter accessed the restricted files on Earth's military history, paying particular attention to a general who had died nearly a century before first contact. "George S. Patton," she murmured, looking at the old photographs. "Aggressive, unpredictable, brilliant." She turned to more recent files. "And now we have another one, using the same playbook against an enemy that has never seen these tactics." Her computer chimed with an incoming message from the Council. "Admiral, the emergency session begins in 1 hour. Be prepared to explain how the humans are succeeding against the Draxians." Carter looked again at the image of the ancient general next to the file of his modern namesake. "I'm not sure they'll believe me," she said to herself. "The humans have discovered a weapon more powerful than any technology, their own past." As dawn broke over a partially destroyed but still fighting Chicago, Major George Patton watched Draxian ships retreating to orbit. The first day of Earth's defense had ended. He knew the war had just begun, but humanity had something the Draxians didn't expect: the ghosts of generals past guiding their way forward. The Galactic Council's emergency session was in chaos. Representatives from all 17 member species argued loudly, while holographic displays showed the ongoing battle on Earth. The Grand Chamber, with its high ceiling and marble-like walls, echoed with angry voices. "How are they doing this?" demanded the Veluxian delegate, his crystalline form vibrating with agitation. "The humans have no energy shields, no quantum weaponry, nothing that should allow them to resist." Admiral Susan Carter stood calmly in the center of the chamber. As the Council's military liaison to Earth, all eyes were on her for answers. "They have something potentially more valuable, the Patton factor," she said. The room fell silent. High Chancellor Zorn, the ancient Taurian who led the Council, leaned forward on his platform. His gray skin wrinkled as he frowned. "Explain," he ordered. Carter activated a holographic display showing Major George Patton directing Earth forces in Detroit, where the second Draxian landing had occurred. The human officer pointed at maps, spoke to soldiers, and moved between defensive positions. "This human officer is employing military strategies developed by an ancient Earth general who shares his name," Carter explained. "These tactics were considered obsolete by humans themselves, but the Draxians have never encountered them." "A single human is responsible for this resistance?" asked the Tellurian ambassador. Her feathered crest rose in disbelief. "Not just any human," Carter replied. "One who studied historical warfare when most of his kind focused only on modern technologies. The Draxians rely on predictive algorithms based on the last 1,000 years of galactic conflict. Patton is using strategies from before humanity reached space, the council members whispered among themselves. For most, the idea of studying ancient warfare seemed pointless. Why look backward when technology always moved forward? Show us evidence of this. Advantage. Chancellor Zorn requested. Carter nodded and expanded the holographic display. It now showed the battle for Detroit from above. The Draxian forces moved in perfect formation, their blue armor glinting in the sunlight. They advanced steadily toward the city center. "Watch what happens next," Carter said. On the display, the human forces suddenly broke from their defensive positions. Instead of retreating or standing their ground, they moved in patterns that seemed chaotic at first. Some units rushed forward, others circled to the sides, while others appeared to flee. The Draxian formation faltered as commanders tried to respond to multiple threats. Their neat lines broke apart as different units pursued different human groups. This is called a feigned retreat, combined with a double envelopment, Carter explained. The human Patton is recreating a maneuver used by an Earth general named Hannibal over 3,000 years ago. The hologram showed the human forces suddenly turning and attacking the now separated Draxian units from multiple directions. Despite superior weapons, the aliens couldn't coordinate their defense. "Remarkable," murmured a Zentari representative, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "They used their knowledge of the past as a weapon." On Earth, Major Patton walked through a temporary field hospital set up in an abandoned shopping mall in Detroit. Wounded soldiers lay on cots while medics worked to save them. Patton stopped to speak with each conscious soldier, offering words of encouragement. Lieutenant Jane Howard approached with a tablet computer in hand. Her uniform was dirty, and she looked tired, but her eyes were alert. "Sir, we've identified patterns in their attack formations," she reported. "They're almost predictable." Patton nodded. "Because they've evolved to fight enemies with superior technology, not superior strategy. They expect us to rely on our few advanced weapons, not our minds." He studied the tactical display on Howard's tablet. The Draxians had regrouped and were preparing for another assault on Detroit. "Get me a direct line to the units in Philadelphia," Patton ordered. "I'm deploying the pincer movement from the North African campaign." Howard looked confused. "Sir, Philadelphia isn't under attack." "Not yet," Patton said with a grim smile. "But it will be. The Draxians are learning. They won't try to take another major industrial center immediately. They'll go for a symbolic target instead." Meanwhile, in the Draxian command ship orbiting Earth, Supreme Commander Vrax studied the battlefield reports with growing concern. His scaled skin had turned a darker shade of blue, a sign of stress among his kind. "These humans are fighting, unlike any species we've encountered," he said to his officers. "Our casualties are 10 times what we projected." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krell, displayed a holographic model of human defensive patterns. "They don't follow standard defensive protocols. When we adjust our tactics, they change theirs in ways our computers cannot predict. Update our combat algorithms immediately," Vrax ordered. Krell hesitated, his 4 hands fidgeting with his uniform. "The algorithms cannot be updated fast enough to counter these primitive strategies. They draw from thousands of years of warfare we have never studied." Vrax's facial tentacles darkened with rage. "Then find this Patton and eliminate him. Without their tactical leader, they will fall back on conventional warfare." Back in the council chambers, the debate continued. Many members feared what humans might do with advanced technologies if they already fought so effectively with primitive ones. "Perhaps we should reconsider our technology-sharing agreements," suggested the Veluxian representative. Admiral Carter shook her head. "That would be a mistake. The Draxians won't stop with Earth. If they conquer humanity, they'll move against the Council next." Chancellor Zorn nodded slowly. "The Admiral is correct. We need the humans to hold until our fleet arrives. There's something else you should know," Carter added. "Major Patton isn't the only human studying historical warfare. Their military academies preserve this knowledge. If the Draxians kill Patton, another will take his place." As if to prove her point, the holographic display showed new battles erupting across Earth. In each location, human forces employed different historical tactics. In Philadelphia, they used a pincer movement. In Sydney, they fought using guerrilla tactics from Earth's Vietnam War. In Cairo, they employed desert warfare strategies from World War II. It appears, Chancellor Zorn said quietly, that we have underestimated our new allies. On Earth, as night fell over the Detroit battlefield, Major Patton received new intelligence. The Draxians had indeed launched an attack on Philadelphia, just as he predicted. But Colonel Frank Miller had implemented the North African pincer movement perfectly. The aliens were surrounded, their landing craft destroyed. "Sir," Lieutenant Howard reported, "we've intercepted Draxian communications. They've put a bounty on your head. Every Draxian soldier has your picture." Patton's face showed no fear. "Good. That means they still don't understand what they're fighting against." He pointed to a map of the United States. "It's not me they should fear. It's the collective military wisdom of thousands of years of human warfare." As the Earth completed another rotation, the Draxians began to realize a terrible truth. They weren't fighting one man or even one military. They were fighting the ghosts of every general, every strategy, and every battle in human history. And history, as they were learning, was a powerful weapon indeed. The Galactic Council's Strategic Committee met in a secure chamber while their fleet raced toward Earth. 7 members sat around a circular table, representing the most powerful species in the Council. Admiral Susan Carter faced intense questioning, from all sides. "Your report suggests this human, Patton, represents an unprecedented tactical resource," said Council Elder Mira, her luminescent skin pulsing with each word. "Yet he employs strategies considered archaic even by human standards." "That's precisely why they're effective," Carter explained. She displayed holographic images of battles across Earth. "The Draxians, like most galactic powers including ourselves, have optimized combat for technological superiority. Patton's approach exploits fundamental principles of warfare that transcend technology." Across the table, General Krell of the Uroxy Defense Force grumbled. His thick armored hide shifted as he leaned forward. "If what you say is true, this human could destabilize power throughout the sector. A military mind that can overcome technological gaps is concerning." "It's not just Patton," Carter continued. "It's what he represents. Earth's historical warfare evolved without gravity manipulation, neural interfaces, or energy shields. They developed strategies based purely on movement, deception, and psychological impact." The committee members exchanged worried glances. Most species had abandoned such primitive approaches thousands of years ago, focusing instead on weapons development. "Show us more evidence," requested Elder Mira. Carter nodded and expanded the holographic display. It showed a battle in progress near Tokyo. Draxian forces advanced with energy shields and hover tanks, but human defenders had flooded rice fields, trapping the alien vehicles in mud. "The humans are using terrain as a weapon," Carter pointed out. "A strategy employed by Earth generals for thousands of years." On Earth, Major Patton reviewed reports from around the globe. 3 days had passed since the initial invasion, and the situation was dire despite their tactical successes. Draxian reinforcements arrived hourly, and Earth's defenders were exhausted. Colonel Frank Miller joined Patton in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Their previous headquarters had been destroyed by Draxian bombardment. "They found us again," Miller said, his face grim. "They're targeting command centers with increasing accuracy." Patton nodded. "They're adapting, not as quickly as I'd hoped, but they're learning." "We can't keep this up forever, George," Miller said quietly. "We've lost Boston and most of Florida. Our troops are exhausted. We don't need to win," Patton reminded him. "We just need to hold until the Council fleet arrives." He pointed to a world map showing active battles. "I'm implementing Operation Scorched Earth in abandoned territories." Miller's eyes widened. "The old Russian strategy against Napoleon? But the civilian cost is less than what the Draxians will do," Patton finished. "We leave nothing useful behind. No resources, no technology, nothing they can use." In orbit, Supreme Commander Vrax received new orders from the Draxian High Command. Capture Patton alive for study. Their tactical computers had failed to adapt to his methods, which seemed to change with each engagement. We have located the human command center, reported Sub-Commander Krell. It is hidden beneath a mountain, but our sensors have detected energy signatures. Prepare a special forces team, Vrax ordered. I want Patton brought to me alive, kill anyone else. Krell bowed. It will be done, Commander, but there is something else. He hesitated before continuing. Our forces report that humans in abandoned territories are destroying their own infrastructure before retreating. They leave nothing behind. Vrax's facial tentacles curled in confusion. They destroy their own cities. This makes no tactical sense. This human is dangerous, Krell told his commander. Not because of what he knows, but because he thinks in ways our civilization has forgotten. Back in the Council fleet, now less than 24 hours from Earth, Admiral Carter received an urgent transmission from Chancellor Zorn. The Council has voted, Zorn announced, his aged face filling the view screen. We are implementing the Patton Protocol. Sir? Carter questioned, unfamiliar with the term. A contingency developed overnight. Earth's resistance has revealed a critical vulnerability in galactic military doctrine. We're establishing a new division under your command. Humans trained in these historical tactics, led by Patton himself. Carter was stunned. You want to bring humans into Council military operations? We need what they know, Zorn said simply. The Draxians have been our enemies for generations. If human tactics can defeat them, we must learn these methods. On Earth, a squadron of Draxian special forces descended on the Rocky Mountain Command Center. They moved silently, their adaptive armor blending with the surroundings. They had trained, for years, to become the Empire's most lethal soldiers, equipped with the best technology available. They found the entrance to the bunker unguarded. No alarms sounded as they moved inside. No defenders appeared in the dark corridors. The lead soldier signaled to his team. Something was wrong. This was too easy. In the central command room, they found only empty chairs and dark screens. Patton was gone. The entire command staff had vanished. Then the mountain began to rumble. 10 miles away, Major Patton watched on a small screen as the entire mountain collapsed. The Draxian Special Forces team disappeared under thousands of tons of rock. Napoleon's Moscow, Patton said quietly to Lieutenant Jane Howard, who stood beside him in their mobile command post. Let the enemy take what you've already prepared to destroy, Howard nodded grimly. But now we have no central command structure. All our regional commanders are operating independently. Exactly, Patton smiled. No central target. We're now fighting a revolutionary war just like America's founding fathers. Scattered forces, local leadership, united only by a common cause. Across the globe, Earth's military adapted to this new approach. Instead of traditional chain of command, they formed autonomous resistance cells, each employing different historical tactics. In Asia, they used strategies from ancient Chinese generals. In Africa, they adapted tactics from Zulu warriors. In Europe, they employed partisan techniques from World War II. The Draxians, unable to target a central command, found themselves fighting hundreds of small wars against enemies who refused to follow conventional military doctrine. As the Council fleet approached Earth, they detected a major space battle in progress. The Draxian fleet had moved to intercept Earth's few orbital defense platforms, expecting easy victory. Instead, Earth's small combat vessels were performing maneuvers never seen in space warfare. They moved in formations based on ancient naval tactics, attacking Draxian ships from unexpected angles. They've adapted their historical naval warfare to three-dimensional space, Admiral Carter realized, watching the battle from her flagship's bridge. Those are age-of-sail tactics from wooden ships, applied to spacecraft. Her tactical officer, a Centauri named Vex, studied the battle with professional interest. Ingenious? The Draxians expected conventional space combat protocols. The humans are fighting as if spacecraft were ocean vessels. Their movements make no sense to modern tactical systems. Within hours, the Council fleet would reach Earth. The question on everyone's mind: would there still be a human civilization to save? And if there was, how would the galactic balance of power shift with the addition of these unpredictable humans and their ancient wisdom? As the Council's fleet approached Earth, Admiral Carter received an urgent transmission from Chancellor Zorn. The aged leader's face appeared on her private view screen, looking both worried and determined. The Council has voted. We are implementing the Patton Protocol, he announced. Sir? Carter questioned, unfamiliar with the term. A contingency developed overnight. Earth's resistance has revealed a critical vulnerability in galactic military doctrine. We're establishing a new division under your command, humans trained in these historical tactics, led by Patton himself. Carter straightened in her chair. You want to bring humans directly into Council military operations? We need what they know, Zorn said simply. The Draxians have been our enemies for generations. If human tactics can defeat them, we must learn these methods ourselves. The Admiral nodded, understanding the significance of this decision. No newly contacted species had ever been integrated into Council forces so quickly. It was both an honor and a sign of desperation. I'll inform Earth's leadership immediately, she said. On Earth, the tide was turning. Draxian forces had adapted to some of Patton's initial strategies, pushing human defenders back in key cities. In Washington, D.C., Patton met with Earth's unified military command in a temporary bunker beneath the Lincoln Memorial. General Lisa Grant, commanding Earth's North American forces, looked exhausted. Her uniform was dusty, and a bandage covered a burn on her left arm. Around the table sat other regional commanders, their faces showing the strain of constant battle. They're learning, Patton explained to the assembled officers, but they're learning specific counters to specific tactics. They don't understand the principles behind them. He pointed to a map showing Draxian advances across multiple continents. Red markers indicated lost territory, while blue showed successful human defenses. Notice the pattern, Patton continued. They've countered our World War II tactics in Europe. They've adapted to Revolutionary War strategies in the Americas, but they counter each approach separately. General Grant leaned forward. What's your recommendation? We switch completely, abandon the Normandy playbook, and move to Vietnam-era asymmetric warfare. They've never seen anything like it. The other commanders exchanged looks. Vietnam-era tactics had been considered failures in human military history. Yet against an enemy like the Draxians, those very failures might become advantages. Can your troops make the adjustment? Patton asked the room. Colonel Hank Wilson, a grizzled veteran commanding Pacific forces, grinned. My granddaddy fought in Vietnam, said it was the strangest war America ever fought. I think we can manage. Within hours, Earth's forces had melted away from direct confrontation. Draxian commanders reported to Supreme Commander Vrax that human military units were suddenly abandoning defensive positions and disappearing into forests, mountains, and urban areas. Vrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching tactical displays with growing frustration. Where have they gone? Our sensors detect movement but no formal military formations. They appear to be dispersing into small units, reported Sub-Commander Krell. But it makes no sense. They're giving up their heavy weapons and defensive positions. It's another of their ancient strategies, Vrax realized. Find Patton. He's behind this change. But Major Patton was nowhere to be found. Operating from a mobile command center, a simple camouflage truck moving constantly through the Appalachian Mountains, he directed strikes that seemed random, but followed patterns developed during humanity's bloodiest conflicts. Small teams of humans would emerge from hiding, strike Draxian supply lines or outposts, then vanish before reinforcements arrived. Alien commanders found themselves controlling territory on maps while actually being surrounded by hostile forces they couldn't see or predict. In Denver, Draxian forces occupied the city center, but couldn't use the streets safely. In Shanghai, they controlled the main infrastructure, but faced constant attacks from sewers and abandoned buildings. In Cairo, they held the airport but couldn't land supplies without taking fire from distant ridgelines. Lieutenant Jane Howard studied reports in Patton's mobile command center. It's working better than we expected, she told Patton. The Draxians are pulling back to defensible positions in major cities. They're abandoning their advance. Patton nodded. Because they don't understand guerrilla warfare. Their entire military doctrine is based on controlling territory through superior firepower. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't care about holding ground. Outside Chicago, a Draxian patrol moved cautiously through abandoned suburbs. The squad leader, an experienced officer named Draz, held up his hand suddenly, stopping his troops. "What is it, sir?" asked a young soldier. "This area should be defended," Draz said quietly, looking at the empty houses. "According to our intelligence, this neighborhood contains a power relay station vital to the region." "Perhaps the humans have retreated," suggested another soldier. Draz shook his head. "No, this is different. The last 3 areas like this were—" He never finished his sentence. Small explosives hidden in everyday objects, mailboxes, cars, trash cans, detonated simultaneously. When Draxian reinforcements arrived an hour later, they found no human forces, only the remains of the patrol and graffiti written on a wall. "Welcome to Vietnam." When the Council fleet arrived in Earth orbit, they found the Draxian invasion in disarray. Admiral Carter's flagship established position alongside the human defense platforms and opened communications with Earth. "Major Patton," she said when his face appeared on her view screen, "the Council has a proposition for you." Patton, looking tired but determined, nodded respectfully. "Admiral, your arrival is timely. The Council has voted to establish what we're calling the Patton Protocol," Carter explained. "We want you to train Council forces in these historical tactics that have proven so effective against the Draxians." Patton raised an eyebrow. "You want our ancient military history?" "We need it," Carter corrected. "The Draxians have threatened peace in this sector for generations. Your methods have done more damage to their forces in days than we've managed in years." On the Draxian flagship, Supreme Commander Vrax received the news of the Council fleet's arrival with cold anger. "Prepare jump engines," he ordered. "We're retreating." "But Commander," protested Subcommander Krell, "we still hold major human cities. We can negotiate from a position of strength." Vrax turned to his subordinate, facial tentacles dark with fury. "You still don't understand what we're facing. These humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. Every time we adapt to one strategy, they implement another from their bloody past." He pointed to a tactical display showing human forces suddenly emerging from hiding across the globe, coordinating with the arriving Council fleet. "And now," Vrax continued, "they will teach these tactics to the Council. The balance of power has shifted permanently." As Draxian ships began jumping away from Earth, Major Patton stood on the roof of a partially destroyed skyscraper in Chicago, watching alien vessels vanish in flashes of light. Lieutenant Howard joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "So we've won?" she asked. Patton shook his head. "Not won, survived, and learned something valuable about ourselves." "What's that, sir?" "That sometimes the past is the best guide to the future." He turned to face her. "The Council wants us to teach them everything we know about historical warfare. They're calling it the Patton Protocol." Howard looked surprised. "They want our outdated tactics?" "There's nothing outdated about strategies that work," Patton replied. "The principles of warfare don't change even if the weapons do. That's something the Draxians never understood." In the distance, Council ships descended through the atmosphere, coming to help rebuild what the invasion had destroyed. But they were also coming to learn what humanity had never forgotten. That history was not just a record of the past, but a weapon for the future. 1 year later, the newly established Patton Academy occupied a massive space station orbiting Jupiter. Through its large observation windows, Earth shone like a blue jewel in the distance. Inside the station, officers from all Council species trained alongside humans in spacious simulation chambers. Colonel George Patton, recently promoted from Major, stood in the observation deck beside Admiral Susan Carter. They watched a training exercise in the massive holographic chamber below. Teams of mixed species executed complex maneuvers based on ancient Earth military tactics. "The Draxians have been quiet since we pushed them back from Proxima Centauri," Carter noted. referring to the nearest star system to Earth, where the Draxians had attempted another invasion 3 months earlier. Intelligence suggests they're completely overhauling their military doctrine. They're adapting, Patton replied, his eyes focused on the training below. But so are we. This week we're introducing Genghis Khan's cavalry tactics adapted for spacecraft formations. Carter raised an eyebrow. Mounted warriors from 1,000 years ago, applied to space combat? The principles are the same, Patton explained. Mobility, deception, and coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Genghis Khan conquered the largest land empire in Earth's history with tactics that modern militaries had forgotten. A group of trainees below executed a perfect flanking maneuver. The team included 2 humans, a crystalline Veluxian, a feathered Tellurian, and a 6-eyed Zentari. Despite their physical differences, they moved with coordinated precision. Council was terrified when they realized what humanity brought to galactic warfare, Carter said. Now they're depending on it. Not just warfare, Patton corrected her. History, perspective. The understanding that progress sometimes means remembering what worked before. He pointed to another training group learning hand-to-hand combat techniques. Look there. Roman legion formations adapted for boarding actions on spacecraft, something no species has attempted in 10,000 years. Carter nodded. Because energy weapons made such tactics obsolete, or so everyone thought. Nothing that works is ever truly obsolete, Patton said. That's the lesson we're teaching the galaxy. In the council chambers on the distant capital world, Chancellor Zorn reviewed the quarterly defense reports with satisfaction. The integration of Earth's military history into galactic security had strengthened the Council's position against multiple threats, not just the Draxians. Elder Mira sat across from him, her luminescent skin glowing softly in the chamber's dim light. Perhaps we should have been more thorough in our assessment of Earth before contact, she mused. We evaluated their technology, their resources, their political systems, Zorn replied. But we failed to consider their past as their greatest resource. Mira nodded. A dangerous oversight. Had the Draxians not attacked them first, we might have found ourselves facing these unpredictable humans as enemies rather than allies. A sobering thought, Zorn agreed. Their capacity for warfare is unlike anything we've seen. Yet they've also shown remarkable restraint, Mira noted. They could have demanded significant concessions after repelling the Draxian invasion. Instead, they asked only for membership in the Council and the opportunity to share their knowledge. Zorn's aged face crinkled in a smile. Wisdom, perhaps, is knowing when not to press an advantage. Another lesson from their history, I suspect. Meanwhile, in deep space near the Draxian home system, a scout ship intercepted a secure transmission from the Council fleet. Inside the small vessel, 3 Draxian intelligence officers worked quickly to decode the message. When they succeeded, they immediately transmitted the contents to Supreme Commander Vrax, now leading the Draxian War College after his failure on Earth. Vrax reviewed the decrypted message with growing concern. His quarters in the War College were sparse, reflecting his fall from favor after the Earth debacle. They're implementing something called Operation Desert Storm, he told his assembled officers. Find every reference to this in Earth's historical database. One of his subordinates, a young officer named Marek, hesitated before speaking. Commander, our spies report they've begun teaching asymmetric warfare to Council forces. Our predictive models cannot. Then we build new models, Vrax interrupted, his facial tentacles pulsing with agitation. The humans have changed everything. War will never be the same. His senior tactical advisor, an old veteran named Zex, spoke carefully. Perhaps we should consider a different approach. If we cannot predict their tactics, perhaps we should study their peace strategies instead. Vrax looked surprised. Explain. Humans have a long history of warfare, yes. But they also have extensive experience with peace treaties, alliances, and coexistence after conflict. Perhaps there are lessons there too. For the first time since the Earth defeat, Vrax felt a glimmer of hope. Research this. Immediately. Back at the Patton Academy, Colonel Patton finished his day reviewing student projects. tactical simulations based on historical Earth conflicts adapted for interstellar warfare. As he prepared to leave his office, Lieutenant Samantha Jones, his administrative assistant, handed him a message. "The Council has approved your proposal, sir," she said. "The Historical Strategy Division is now a permanent branch of their military structure." Patton nodded, satisfaction evident in his tired face. "And the Educational Initiative?" "Also approved. Every Council world will include Earth's military history in their academic curricula," Jones replied. Patton smiled, thinking of his namesake and all the other generals whose long-forgotten tactics were now protecting humanity among the stars. Good. Because the best way to prevent war is to understand it completely. He walked to the window and looked out at distant Earth, peaceful now after the devastation of the Draxian invasion. Rebuilding efforts continued around the globe, with Council assistance accelerating the recovery. "Sir," Jones said, interrupting his thoughts, "there's one more thing. We've received a request from the Draxian War College. They're asking permission to send students to the academy." Patton turned, surprised. "The Draxians want to learn from us?" "Apparently so. They specifically requested training in what they call post-conflict reconciliation strategies from Earth history." For a moment, Patton was silent. Then he laughed softly. "Tell them yes. And add a special course on the Marshall Plan after World War II. "The Marshall Plan, sir?" "The program that helped rebuild our enemies after we defeated them," Patton explained. "Sometimes the most powerful weapon is generosity toward a former foe." As stars shone through the viewport behind him, Patton realized that Earth's greatest contribution to the galaxy might not be its war strategies after all, but its long, painful journey toward peace. Far below, in the training chambers, a human instructor stood before a diverse group of alien officers. On the wall behind her hung portraits of Earth's greatest military leaders: Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and the original General George S. Patton. "Today," she told her students, "we study not just how to win conflicts, but how to end them. Because in Earth's long history we've learned one thing above all else: the purpose of understanding war is ultimately to build lasting peace." Earth's secret weapon had never been just Major George Patton or even its military history. It was humanity's entire journey. The wars, the peace, the failures, and the triumphs. A history that would now help guide the stars.